Hello, everybody, and welcome to StreetCones Road to Change live streams, second chances and new beginnings, working with Aberdeen, unpaid work. I invite you all, whatever platform you're watching this on, whether it's Facebook, Vimeo, YouTube, to use the comment section or use Twitter. Get in touch with us, send us your questions if you have any questions about the film that you've just seen, the film that you're about to see, or any of the chat that the facilitators and participants are going to engage in today. So if you want to say anything to us, you have any questions, fire it over. So StreetCones have been running these Road to Change workshops now for roughly about the last 7 months, and they were a response to well, two things: the community payback order film that we produced about a year ago, and the pandemic, when everything was shifted online. And so we are running these Road to Change creative workshops online with 13 local authorities across Scotland, and they are 2-hour workshops that are run on a once weekly or twice weekly basis in some cases, and we have people who are on community payback orders come into these workshops with us, and out of which we create something of value, a script, a story that they then go on to read, and there's short films made of them. So today you're going to see some of that great work that Aberdeen Unpaid Work have done. So I'm going to introduce you to one of the main players in that, and that is Inspector of Partnerships for Police Scotland, Darren Bruce. Darren, if you'd like to come on and say a few words, and then we'll go into the film. Hi, Darren.
Thanks very much, Adam. How are you getting on?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
First of all, just I think we're all struggling with this, how we've taken to online, but it seems quite fitting how we've come online today, because that's been a core part of the work that's been done by StreetCones. So not only is StreetCones significant because it's innovative, but just as importantly, it's significant today because it represents a really personal journey that some of the participants had come on. So it's been a privilege for me to be part of the unveiling of this today. So in Aberdeenshire, the Community Justice Partnership understands the value of community payback orders. They remain one of the best ways of allowing offenders to really stay in touch with communities whilst getting the support and the help they need to help break that offending cycle. Whilst at the same time, community payback orders allow people who have been offending to pay back something in respect to the harm that may have been caused in a community. During 2019-2020, there were about 600 community payback orders across Aberdeenshire, and that's a real significant amount. And the majority of those were unpaid work. And if I just tell you that the engagement rate was 98%, it kind of demonstrates the whole success in the engagement. So we kind of fast forward 2020, the COVID pandemic, we had to look at new ways of doing things and how we bring help and support to those that needed it, because we weren't able to do face-to-face work anymore with people. So that was when the Criminal Justice Social Work Department and the wider Community Justice team looked at new ways and looked to StreetCones for that help. Although it's been challenging, it provided a new opportunity, a new way to look at things. And this video has really been based on the experiences of the 12 participants as they've gone on the journey through the first module. It's a brilliant script, and it's been produced and details their involvement and the involvement they had with the project. And it's kind of a real testament to not only the participants, but also the Criminal Justice Social Work team for kind of stepping out and looking at this as something they wanted to do. So I suppose the question that a number may have is, why am I here? Why are police here? Well, I've got two answers to that. And the first one's a very personal reason. And that's because for 24 years, I've really been at the front end of what you call the criminal justice system, and that's the police end. And that's when somebody comes to our attention, we've got to take enforcement action. So for those kind of 24 years, I've seen, cycles of reoffending, and it's not until I've been working with the criminal justice team in Aberdeenshire and the wider Community Justice Partnership that I've really seen the innovation and great work it's getting done to break that cycle. So for a personal reason, it's great for me to see success stories. And I think StreetCones in the video you'll see today is one of the success stories that's come out of the work that the Community Justice Partnership's done. And secondly, my job takes me into a place now where I'm working with a Community Justice Partnership, and that's looking at things and ways we can innovate to break that cycle so that people aren't offending. Maybe addresses the crisis that people are coming to the police with or coming to our attention with, and it also looks at the sometimes trauma that's sitting in behind somebody's personal story. So really, we want to be part of that. The police want to be part of breaking that cycle, and we kind of want to jump on board the great work that's getting done by the Community Justice Partnership in Aberdeenshire. I've got to commend the people that we'll see here today, and that's because they've gone on and shared a really personal story, and it's great to be part of that unveiling. StreetCones has been an opportunity for second chances, and I'm absolutely certain StreetCones will go on and form part of the unpaid work future in Aberdeenshire. So if I can now pass on, and we'll get to see this video because it really is first class. Thanks.
We knew we were going to have to adapt, and although that was really challenging, it provided us with an opportunity to think about how we do things differently, how we can deliver our services in a different way, and maybe be a bit more creative around that.
I think that's a fucking sign, isn't it?
Huh?
I was on the phone with Lydia, Ken, my sister, this morning, started talking the usual shite. I'm going to change, I'm going to go get a job, just a wee 20 and I'll be on my way.
Did you fall for it?
I think I did.
You?
Do you know, just got a bit tired?
I've not slept in 48 hours, mate.
I mean, just all the time, wake up, have a wee drink with breakfast.
Breakfast?
There's always a wee bit munchy box left, Ken. You get pissed, smoke a blunt, order some pizza, call up your mates, see if anyone's about.
That's the good stuff.
But it feels like these days there's less and less folk to call. Get what I mean? Everybody just comes and leaves. Seems like everyone's life's just going great and mine's just, I don't know, on hold. Sam and Lorianne are living together now. Folk off to college or working or whatever. I'm still getting my bits out in the middle of Glasgow Central because I didn't want to pay 50p for a pish. I'm so glad to see you. We need to talk. I've been doing some thinking and I'm done with messing about. I want what Sam and Lorianne have. I didn't even know you two knew each other.
We didn't really, not until we ran into each other at the gum clinic this morning.
Are you? Oh my god, this is it. I knew this was a special day. I knew it. Fresh start, making a change, and now we'll have you and we're going to have a baby and... Oh, right then. Well, fresh start, fresh antibiotics, right? Clear up the infection or the past or something. Safe sex is important. Get checked regularly.
How positive you maybe found the experience in relation to doing actual physical unpaid work, and do you think that a combination of these two things, for instance, is a good way forward for Aberdeenshire to manage their unpaid work service?
Whilst I enjoyed doing the gardening and the physical stuff, well, apart from picking up rope off Rattray Beach, but that was hard going. But I think StreetCones was a reflective exercise on what the position we've got ourselves into, I've got myself into, and why, and some of the issues that were around for me. And yeah, I think that in itself was the most valuable part of pulling together a script, putting together the issues, and seeing how it affected individuals.
What would have been worse? 180 hours of community payback. Wasn't so bad, really. I met some good people, and I needed it.
Needed it?
The CPO wasn't the punishment, really. It was the talk. Ended up all over Facebook. Ended up in the paper somehow. That was bad enough, but my fiancée, she just couldn't hack it. She left. If I didn't have something getting me up in the morning, people to talk to, that understood, I don't know what would have happened. But when I started thinking about how to make those people happy instead of focusing on my own problem, then I started to find some direction for myself too. Do right by people and you lift each other up.
Bit cheesy, isn't it?
Well, maybe, but it's true. Look, a relationship isn't 50-50. It should be 100-100. If you don't both put in, you're all never going to work. I'm not saying never do the things you want, but I wouldn't be you versus her. I bet if you actually talked, you'd realize you're on the same thing. Oh, look, I'm just an old man giving advice you did not ask for. It's what I wish I knew when I was your age.
Again, throughout 2020, so much of our lives moved online. We had to, we didn't have any other option. And working with StreetCones has enabled us to move unpaid work online. It was a new venture for us. It was something we hadn't tried before. But based on what I've seen today, what I've heard today, I really hope that it's something that we can continue in future, because this has just been brilliant. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful, and I do really want to extend my thanks and that of my colleagues as well for your involvement in it. So thank you.
My unpaid work finished 3.5 weeks ago, and I've continued with the workshop because that's kind of what it meant to me. And the seeing familiar faces, and as Aid says, talking almost anonymously about some of your feelings without anybody judging you or nobody asking sort of any questions, because sometimes when you are doing the unpaid work and you are out there, everyone kind of knows why you're there generally, because it's quite obvious sometimes. So I think the online, and as Aid says, being able to talk anonymously maybe about your feelings and putting them towards a character who's not you, and it's maybe not necessarily your sort of problems or whatever, but that you can actually talk about it remotely is probably a bigger help than, as you say, going out and doing some gardening or doing litter picking or working in a shop or these different things. So I definitely think possibly the combination would maybe work when we're a wee bit out of this pandemic, but you know, the relief of getting your hours done and doing it the way it's kind of worked this time, I definitely think has been a big boost for people's mental health.
It's been truly fantastic seeing what everyone's managed to create together over these last 15 weeks. I really think that sometimes it's just the right group of people that can come together and make something really special happen.
So the last song of the night goes out to all the folk that stuck with us through it all.
A wise man once told us realising you need a change is just the beginning, and he was absolutely right.
Thank you, everyone who was involved with that. It was very special. I was lucky enough to be an audience member to watch the whole of that read through, and it was very moving. the whole thing. So that was a short edited kind of highlights. So let me introduce some of the team now from Aberdeenshire. We've also got one of the participants who's struggling with an internet connection, but we're going to try and get Philippe on board too. So I'll introduce everyone one by one. So if we can have Joe Walsh, the Unpaid Work team manager up in Aberdeenshire. Hi Joe, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Walsh. I work for the Community the Criminal Justice Social Work team here in Aberdeenshire with Unpaid Work Service.
Great, good to have you. And then if we could have Kirsty Milne, who's Criminal Justice Team Manager up in Aberdeenshire.
Thank you for having me along. Yeah,
Hi,
I'm Kirsty
Kirsty.
Milne. I manage the fieldwork team based up in North Aberdeenshire, and I also cover some of the unpaid work team in Central Aberdeenshire. Right.
Excellent. Welcome. And then let's see if we can get Philippe on, who's one of the participants who you saw in the video. Is Philippe there, or have we lost him? We've lost Philippe, which is a shame because he's an absolutely fantastic participant. And just to have his dulcet French, I think he's French, tones with us would have been great. But so we're getting some questions now. For those of you who are still with us, keep firing your questions over to us. And any of you guys, Joe, Kirsty, Bruce, Darren, if you want to come in. So we've got one here, Natalie Wright on Twitter, regarding second chances. She says, are the stats above regarding CPO reoffending rates quoted in the film national or just Aberdeenshire? Do you think the current 12-month figure could be extended? I imagine she means the presumption against short-term prison sentences. But anyone want to say anything about that? Do you know about the stats that were quoted in the film?
I could maybe help with that. Understanding that's a national figure.
Joe.
Understanding that's a national figure rather than Aberdeenshire figure. And also in terms of the 12 months presumption being extended, then that I think that it would be wrong for me to say that yes or no to that, but I think there could, I would think there might be a possibility to that, but it's an open opinion probably.
Yeah. And there's another question here, Marlene Dugan on Twitter, regarding the courts being issued with a CPO. Is it left to the discretion of each individual sheriff? Are they mostly for or against CPOs, or is it an element of luck depending on which sheriff you get? Who would like to come in? Kirsty, you're smiling.
Yeah, no, I would say that the majority of sheriffs would lean towards allowing people to stay in the community and give them the opportunity to work with us in the community in the first instance to see if we can support people make positive change. Because I guess that, from my point of view, I would say that that's worked very well, and it prevents a lot of people going to custody that would be better in the community.
Yeah. Anyone else want to say anything on that? Darren?
Thanks, Adam. I agree with Kirsty entirely that with every offence and every crime, there are a general tried and tested guidelines that sheriffs will have about sentencing. And absolutely agree with Kirsty that if there's a community sentence available, then that's the route it should be taken.
Yeah. Joe, do you want to say anything along on that topic?
Just to agree with both what Darren and Kirsty said, there is an element of discretion allowed to the sheriffs, but the arrangements for community payback orders are national, and also the presumption against short sentences is also national. So there is going to be the likelihood that someone would get a community payback order. And speaking for Aberdeenshire, Peterhead Court, that would be, or Banff Court, and probably Aberdeen City Court as well, then I would say that most people would be likely to get a community payback order where that's suitable and possible.
Yeah. We've got a question here from John Hume. Did I hear right? Participants finished hours and still attend voluntarily. Wow. Yes, that's happened in various local authorities now. We've had participants engage in a 12-week programme with us and finish their other activity hours and want to stay part of the workshop. So that has happened. Yeah. Question from Jackie Simpson. This might be one for you to start off with, Darren. In what way do police get involved in community sentence discussions, and do police have an interest in CPO versus custody?
That's a really good question in two parts. Potentially it's easier to answer the second part in terms of the custody element. Now, we'd have an interest in somebody coming into custody if it was the sentence that we believed that somebody could no longer be safe or would cause high levels of harm in a community. And for that reason, we believe that custodial sentences may be the place for an offender of that, with that elements. And that's so that that work to help the offender can carry on in a prison setting. For instance, that, you know, an individual that may be so far down the road in terms of a substance misuse, alcohol misuse, that engagement just isn't possible, then a sentence might be a place where that work can take place in a controlled environment, and also provides a safety element for the individual themselves, so that they're not coming to harm through continued substance misuse. So that's an example, and I can maybe frame it a bit better. In terms of the first question, what ways do we work with the community justice? Well, I suppose we're at the core of that, those conversations, at the core of this group. You know, our findings in terms of offending in the community form part of the discussions, the future, and what we do with individuals that are offending. So, you know, we're at the heart of those discussions, and help formulate plans for the future and the way we do things.
Yeah. Yeah, that question I think was very much for you, Darren. So we're getting some other questions in here. Sylvia Adair on Facebook. Do you think longer, short sentences? So I'm getting a feed here from Philippe, who's our participant. We're desperately going to try and get Philippe on. Philippe, we can hear you, and we're still working on your connection. And once we think it's stable, we're going to try and bring you into the stream so we can hear you. So if you just hang out in the background, and we'll get with you as soon as we can. So Sylvia Adair on Facebook. Do you think longer short sentences, that's like little big, do you think longer short sentences should be replaced with CPOs? Joe, what's your feeling about that?
They already are, as partly that answer, is that we do have people in community payback orders that if they had gone to custody, it would be a substantial sentence. We can have someone on a community payback order for up to 3 years, and also completing 300 hours of unpaid work. And as part of the supervision requirement for that 3 years, that would, you know, that could also include other requirements to undertake programmed work for, you know, in relation to the offences that they've been convicted of. So yeah, there is a lot of scope for that to happen. And whether it could happen more, I'm unsure as to whether we're actually at a place just now where actually the appropriate number of sentences are carried out that allow people to be on a community order rather than be in prison for that. Probably, on balance, I would say there might be a possibility for that to be more possible than it is just now. But Kirsty and Darren might disagree with that. That's my opinion only.
Yeah. Kirsty, what's your feeling about that? Longer, short sentences?
I agree that for anybody to have the opportunity to be in the community where they can be in the community, that is more beneficial, because they can immediately sort of start on programme work. Whereas if they go to custody for 12 months, 18 months, whatever, you know, there's potentially less opportunities for them to do the programme work that we can start straight away within the community with them, whilst supporting them manage other aspects of their life that is maybe influencing offending behaviour in the first place. So it's a more holistic kind of supportive package for people to be in the community and have access to all the available supports, whilst often having the unpaid hours aspect that will pay back to the community at the same time. So I think it's just a bigger kind of package of support and monitoring in the community.
Yeah. Darren, what's your feeling about that? Longer, short sentences?
I think we're all on the same page in Aberdeenshire in terms of the Community Justice Partnership. And I've got to echo the views of Joe and Kirsty that, and it brings it back to the point that if we can have community-based sentences and there is an opportunity to start that programme work straight away, then that's surely got to be a route to help the individual out of a cycle. But that's my view on it.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a question from Ronnie Cook on Twitter. All the questions are coming by Twitter today, it seems. In relation to rural settings, did the online nature of the programme mean that some participants' access was easier? And how do people in rural locations normally complete hours pre-pandemic? Kirsty, do you want to start off with that one? That's quite a good question, that one.
Okay, are you meaning in terms of the actual physical unpaid work in rural?
Yeah,
settings?
so I was supposed to start with that then, yeah, pre-pandemic, how easier and how were people in rural areas accessing CPO service?
Yeah, I guess prior to COVID, we were in a position where we would go and collect people from all the smaller rural communities. Aberdeenshire is a huge geographical area to cover, so the team's kind of broken up into the north, south, central. But we have teams in each of the areas that would go out and physically collect people and take them to a location to do unpaid work. Obviously that all changed with COVID, and we had to sort of redesign how we did things so that we could still continue to get people through their unpaid work, but doing it very differently and very safely. So therefore we were no longer able to go and collect people in the very remote rural areas. So instead of collecting them to take them somewhere else, our task supervisors, once we were allowed to go back out on unpaid work, would go to them and try and do something with them in their own local area. So we've just found, and obviously we used the StreetCones as a means of some of the other activity hours, and we've found different ways to continue providing a service, I suppose, and offering the support to the people that we're working with. Because obviously a lot of our people in the rural outlying areas are quite remote anyway and have little contact with other people. So the pandemic would have added to that. So therefore for us to maintain our contact with them, we felt was quite a vital part of that ongoing support and encouragement for them to continue with their orders and maintain working on their unpaid hours.
And do you feel like for participants that it was, for a lot of participants, it was easier for them to access this particular area of their CPO? Do you think we were getting more people in now online? And I suppose the extension of that question is after post-COVID, when people are back to normal, if that ever happens. Yeah, I'm in Glasgow where it feels like it's never going to end. But do you think there'll always be a version of online CPO delivery now, or?
Absolutely, because I think what we've found is that some of the online contact and telephone contact that we've had with service users throughout the whole of the pandemic has actually had quite a positive impact, because there's not the same, having for them to have to travel to offices and having that false office environment, and that, somebody's sitting across the desk looking at you whilst, you're talking about things. So it's actually been in some degrees quite beneficial, and we've had actually better contact with some service users who find that less intimidating. So having that online contact has created quite positive working relationships. So in that respect, we're kind of at a point now where we're back starting to work with people more on a face-to-face basis, and we've got quite good attendance and quite positive working contacts with our service users. So in that respect, that's one of the beneficial things that we're going to continue into sort of looking at how we do things in the future, because that part of it has worked, that online contact.
Yeah. What's been your experience, Joe, with your area and your participants online? How's it been for you?
Well, it's very much about relationship building, as Kirsty says, and that has been one of the lessons that we've learned through this, because it has been a fabulous learning opportunity over the last 15 months. It's encouraged us to work very differently, to try things that maybe we would have shied away from before. So when your hand's forced, you will do different things. So working with lower numbers of people for a start has allowed better relationships to build. And our task supervisors have only been working with one person at a time when we have been allowed to be out doing work at all. So we have seen an increase in attendance due to the just being the one person. I think it has afforded opportunities to service users to engage with us more willingly than they might have before, for a number of reasons. So we do find that we are actually having better relationships with our service users because of that. We can't always work on a one-to-one basis. That obviously isn't realistic, especially for the number of hours and unpaid work requirements that we have in Aberdeenshire. We will have to increase the numbers, but we would still plan to keep that relatively low, and certainly lower than we used to try and aim for, which we do recognise didn't work anyway. So yeah, but we'll continue to work on that smaller, maybe a 1-to-3 ratio, but also 1-to-1 work. And we've created opportunities for people to work with workers who can provide higher support to people who maybe have higher support needs. And we are looking at different opportunities of people completing physical unpaid work on a different basis from what we did before.
Got you. Good. Question here from Jacqueline McVeigh, again via Twitter. Impact on families. The bits in the film about family members and the impact on family members. Did participants' family get to see the performance? I could answer that, but I'm just keen to have you guys. I speak so much. I'm keen to have you guys participate in here. Darren, can you say anything about that to Jacqueline? The impact on families and the bits in the film that family members.
Philippe maybe wanted to come in. Adam, I think Philippe maybe wanted to come in there.
Yeah, I know you can hear Philippe, but the audience cannot hear Philippe.
Absolutely.
We're still having an issue with his feet.
If I can maybe then just come in that point is when. So I think we've still got Philippe trying to come in there.
Yeah, it's okay. It's hard. You can hear Philippe, but the audience can't. So in the nicest possible way, we're going to have to.
What?
Okay, well, I think we're going to try and go to Philippe's audio. I love this. Okay, Philippe, I think we're having some trouble with the audio stream, in particular for your feed. So I do apologise. Hopefully, we're going to try and get Philippe back and get him in, because it's really, really valuable to get his input there. But we can go. Yes, Darren, do you want to come in on that?
If I maybe just approach this from a slightly different position, in that the impact following offending for families is quite big. And just taking us back to look at the stigma that comes with that, how a family feels that someone within their kind of unit has been responsible for an offence, and what that brings in terms of prying eyes from communities out there. So it's quite a big impact. So it's quite a big thing for a family to retain someone who has been offending within that family unit and not have to go through even more stigma of having someone placed in a custodial sentence. And I think what StreetCones has gone on and done, and what we've seen in actually the video, is that it's started to restore relationships with someone who's been offending back with their family. And I think we hear of a kind of very personal story of one of the gentlemen that had been involved, and now he's now talking to members of his family again. So for me, that's absolutely huge, and a demonstration of how StreetCones has worked for that individual. You know, so it's for me, the impact on family of any type of following any type of offence is big. But it's made a lot easier if the person responsible for the offence is kept within the family unit.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to say anything, Kirsty or Joe, about the impact on families and of CPOs?
Well, I would say that one of the big impact of going to custody rather than having a CPO is really the burning part for me, because whenever somebody goes to custody, then it destroys relationships within the family. It leaves somebody to be a single mother, for instance. It leaves no contact between children and their father. It interrupts access to employment probably, and also benefits claims have to restart on release. So there's lots of impacts onto the family, I think, that are financial, as well as the stigma part is hugely important, as well as Darren says, but there's other impacts that happen onto the family when somebody leaves the community and goes into custody. So I sort of answer that the sort of a different way around, but it supports the idea that people, where possible, should be in the community serving their sentence in the community. So it's less disruptive to families.
Yeah. Kirsty, do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with both Joe and Darren that I think when we begin working with people at the point of like court reports and stuff, that they often themselves haven't given a lot of thought to the impact of their offending on their family members, and it's through a bit of maybe discussion and potentially sometimes a bit of challenging on the outcome of their offending on other people that they begin to realise the impact on the wider family unit as well as the local communities. So yeah, and I think that opportunity to be on a community payback order, these are some of the things we can look at is family relationships, because often that can be an issue for people in the first instance. So it's something we can help people work on whilst they're on a community payback order. So yeah, it does have a huge impact on families, and hopefully we can support people make the changes necessary to improve their family relationships where needed.
And just to add, the second part of that question was that family members are able to see the live stream. So today they can tune in and they can be watching this, and they would have seen the short film that was edited. So they get to kind of participate in the family members' transformation, or as the title of the workshops are, their road to change. Craig McCrory has asked, would it be easy to roll this out to a large number of service users, and are there any plans to do so? Darren, do you want to wade in on that one? It's a bigger conversation, I think, but we could try and answer that one.
It's a conversation to be had. I think following the success of what we've seen, it certainly is something worth looking at on a wider scale. Not just confined to community payback orders, but other areas of policing where there's a need for engagement and real, excuse me for that, but other areas of policing where there's a real need for engagement and bringing people on board. So I certainly think it could be rolled. I think in terms of wider rollout for community payback orders too, or the use of this with community payback orders maybe better answered by maybe Joe or Kirsty on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe, Kirsty, or
well,
Joe, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll say a wee bit, and I'm sure Kirsty will have her own opinion on it as well. I think that, yeah, there is opportunities to widen it, I think, and I've said right from when I became very first aware of this, of StreetCones, that I thought it would be actually very useful for people that were coming through the through care system who maybe have spent longer periods of time in custody, for instance, and it would be quite a useful thing to take part in as a licence condition, for instance, if somebody was on parole or non-parole, but also see it as good early interventionist work as well. So that when somebody is, starting to become involved in more offending behaviour, then it might be useful to be sort of involved in this sort of this idea as well, to divert people away from further offending. I think there would be opportunities there. It isn't, I don't have the power, I'm afraid, to dip into my manager's budget and decide to widen it to everybody, regardless if I might like to do that. It certainly would take wider discussions with people higher up our organisation before we could answer that properly, that question. But I certainly do think that there's an argument for it, and I think it would be a good thing too.
What's your feeling, Kirsty?
Yeah, I would agree that probably even more so at the early stages of, like, even people that get offered a diversion from prosecution, it's maybe a good place for them starting looking at where they're going in life and what alternatives there could be for them. We're now dealing more and more with structured deferred sentences and various other outcomes from the court as well. So equally, yes, if we had a budget that could allow more groups of people from our service to be able to access StreetCones in Aberdeenshire, then that it could only be beneficial, because I guess this run of StreetCones that we've just been involved in has had a really huge impact on the people participating, and it's been really positive feedback from them. So yeah, I would like to see it being used again where we can.
A development of that question, I suppose, from Sylvia Adair on Facebook. Do you feel there is more focus now on why people offend rather than the offence? I suppose, Darren, I'm going to come to you to kick that one off. Do you feel there's more focus now on why people offend rather than the offence?
Absolutely, and I think I touched on, the traditional start point for the criminal justice system has been the point where police become involved. We start to examine why people offend. I'm saying we started, that's been ongoing for some time, but really now we're getting an understanding as to why people offend. And it's not a surprise now. We start to see trauma in people's background. We start to see, crisis points in people's lives, and knowing those things can now mean that we can target through early intervention people before they even start their offending behaviour, when maybe precursor signs are there. So absolutely, we're paying attention to what causes people offend and trying to address that further upstream. But also the work of the Criminal Justice Social Work Department, in fact, everybody that's on screen here, is vitally important as well, because sometimes the first point that we will know about offending is the point the offence takes place. So it's absolutely vital that tail bit is why is somebody offended? We know they've offended. The right thing to do is try and address the issues that person may have in their life, so that cycle is broken and it doesn't go on carrying on repeating itself. So absolutely, we're paying close attention to why people are offending. We're trying to address that both upstream and once an offence has been committed. It's so cross-cutting. In Aberdeenshire, absolutely, I would say leading the way in some of the work that's being done through the conversations that the whole partnership are having.
Yeah. Kirsty, what's your feeling about that? Is there more focus now on why people offend rather than the offence?
I think it's something we've always tried to look at as social workers, because it's, you know, what we've always been trained to do is look at cause and effect kind of thing. But I think it's become more apparent now in the work we do on a day-to-day basis, because we look at someone's risk in correlation to their needs, and how that needs maybe impact on the level of risk of reoffending or risk of harm. So yeah, we look at that on an ongoing basis with anybody in a community payback order, reassessing all the time, because people's lives change, don't they? They maybe start off fairly unstable or have chaotic lifestyles, and we can maybe support them address some of these issues, but equally they can, you know, fall into more difficulty and become more chaotic as things go along. So we have to adapt the way we're working with people in quite a holistic approach in order to address the needs that maybe will influence further offending. So yes, I think we very much do look at it both together for assessing risk on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Now, Joe, I imagine your answer's similar, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Difficult to add to that. No, just to mention that the way that we write reports now is different from how we did, you know, several years ago. There is much more emphasis on the analysis of the offence and what the behaviour behind the offence was, so that when we do submit reports, using the risk assessment tool that we use as well, which is very analytical, and by the time that goes to the court and it's in front of the sheriff, he has much more information with regards to the underlying causes of the offending behaviour, which then allows probably a community payback order to be made so that the work can be addressed within that.
Yeah. We've got a good question here from Denise Meehan, and this would be really ideal for Philippe, but we've struggled. In fact, a few of us, and me included, had Wi-Fi struggles before the stream today, so it's not exclusive to Philippe, sadly. But this question's for Philippe via YouTube. And she's interested to hear a participant in the film talking about how working with fictional characters help them reflect on their own choices. Can Philippe talk about that? Well, as one of the lead facilitators at StreetCones, and have been working with StreetCones for the last 6 years, running these kinds of workshops, the benefit of a participant being able to kind of role play effectively and have a degree of distance between an event or a situation or an offence that allows them a perspective that they could otherwise never perhaps achieve, and certainly would be very difficult for them to achieve purely through punitive mechanisms. That this StreetCones believe very firmly that what we're doing is very valuable. It's as valuable as, say, they would normally be out maybe building a picnic bench or painting fences and helping in the community. And at the end, they've got something that they can look on and they can be proud of. And likewise with this work, they build something over a period of weeks, sometimes delving very deep within themselves to work in these characters and these stories. And then they're able, through that process, to kind of stand back and have a period of reflection. And it can be often very, very powerful. I think, like Darren was saying earlier, that one, member was then talking to their family again. So this process is it's a very, very powerful one. And for those people who say, isn't it easy? Surely it's easier coming into a workshop with StreetCones than it is being out picking litter. Sometimes being out picking litter is easier than being in one of our workshops, because this is a bit like picking litter for the mind and the soul. So it's they both have their challenges and they both have their rewards. So I've kind of answered in a way for Philippe there, but let's. Craig McGrory's asked the question: will it be easy? Oh, did I ask that one? Will it be easy to roll this out to a large number of service users? And are there plans to do so? Did I ask that question already? I'm losing my mind. I've spent way too much time online. No, Alison McQuat on Twitter. Future workshops. This possibly for Kirsty and Joe more. Is this an ongoing programme in Aberdeenshire, or is that it finished?
I believe we have looked into continuing another programme following on from the success of the first one. So I believe that it is something we will continue with in Aberdeenshire.
Great. Joe, have you got anything to add?
No, it's as concise as that, I think.
Okay. Tracy Robinson on YouTube. What about members of the public and victims of crime who would rather offenders were picking litter type work as a punishment rather than attending creative workshops online from the comfort of their own home? That's a fair question. Darren, what would your response be to Tracy there?
I think part of the criminal justice process has to be supporting a victim. You know, and I think as a society we need to move away from the view that, you know, locking somebody up and is the answer, because we all know now that that's not the answer, and that doesn't fix or stop somebody from going on and committing an offence again. But actually, dealing with the issues that maybe sit behind that is one of the, I think, questions was earlier, that's the absolute must. So I think there's the difference from what is seen to be justice and what actually is justice. And what we need to do is actually bring society to the viewpoint that, you know, justice is actually stopping it happening again. That brings me on to the kind of final point that I must stress, is that the important thing here is making sure that victim feels that justice has been done. Making sure the victim knows that there's a consequence in place for the person committing the offence. So that's the real important thing, is working with that victim to make sure there's an understanding there that what we're doing is the right thing, and it's not necessarily locking somebody up.
Yeah. Joe, what would your response be to Tracy there about, you know, victims, and wouldn't they rather they were picking litter than working from the comfort of their own home?
I think that I would like to reassure Tracy and other people as well that the street cones and work of this kind does not replace unpaid work, physical tasks. That people are still expected to do physical work in order to complete hours. This work with street cones is the any other activity component of a community payback order, which can only amount to 30% or 30 hours of that order. So if somebody has 100 hours community payback unpaid work, then they can only spend 30 hours of that doing the street cones work, for instance, or other work similar to this. The other 70 hours will have to be spent doing physical unpaid work. So the litter, the other stuff, which I have to say, you know, extends far beyond litter. We are relying very heavily on that at the moment. But when we have people completing their unpaid work hours, there is opportunities for, and they should, and we have to make sure this is included, that people get an opportunity to learn new work skills, and it helps maybe prepare them for employment if they haven't had that before. So we normally, outside of COVID restrictions, we take part in a wide range of activities that are physical work, which would be including, you know, woodwork skills, landscaping skills, painting skills, assembly skills in terms of fence building, or we are making lots of bird boxes and planters, for instance. And lots of other things as well that allow people to learn a new skill or enhance a skill they already have, or indeed share a skill they already have with other people that are also completing their unpaid work. So it's about having a sort of merged approach, if you like, which is the sort of new speak. I think that word came out of 2020. Everything seems to be merged. So, but I think actually to grasp that and say, well, actually a community payback order with unpaid work can be kind of merged as well. It can be this, it can be several other things as well. But nothing can replace entirely the need for physical unpaid work that people must do as part of that order.
Yeah. Kirsty,
if I can just...
Oh yeah, sorry, Darren. Yeah, come on.
It was just to give Tracy some further reassurance as well. This is not about us going soft on crime or soft on offences at all. You know, just I want to make the final point that this works for the right type of crime and offences, and there will be crimes and offences when this is absolutely not the thing to do. But what this does is it gives a new opportunity for potentially that lower level, lower tariff things that have happened for us to take the, you know, community payback and even street cones route.
Yeah. Kirsty, have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I would just reiterate what Joe is saying. We're doing a combined approach of various things. I guess where we've maybe got a gap is not advertising what it is we do physically out in the communities with various tasks, and it's something we are sort of getting a bit better at now, as in, you know, taking photographic evidence of the tasks that, you know, people are out doing. And we do a lot of really positive stuff around the whole of Aberdeenshire, and we're just finding ways of, you know, getting that information to other people. But yeah, you know, most definitely the majority of people will be out still doing unpaid work hours out in the community as well. So
yeah, and I think maybe Tracy, hopefully you would have been reassured a little bit by the question, the answer I gave before about the direct benefits of participants being able to reflect on their offence and some of their behaviour. That kind of work is invaluable, and I'm not saying they couldn't get perhaps that reflection while they're out picking litter. I know we're heavy on the litter, but painting fences and working in the community, they could still get that reflection. But this work is definitely forming a very valuable part of the toolbox for that, because if it is, and I suppose, Darren, actually, yes, this works perfectly for lower tariff, but the kind of work that we've done with StreetCones, we've done a lot of work in Shotts prison over the years, and we're dealing obviously with high tariff offenders there, and this kind of work has proved very valuable there too. So it's making sure, I think, that we use the whole array of tools and not favour one over the other. Michael Page on YouTube, are participants attending coming from similar offences, or are they mixed in together from all different types of offences? I feel like I'm always starting with you, Darren, but that's probably another one for you to start on. Are participants attending from similar offences, or are they a real mixed bunch?
This is where I've purposely not gone on and find out what offences the people as part of StreetCones have been responsible for. I wanted to come to today with a view that everybody that took part was successful, in their own way, and I didn't want anything to change that view. So I'll probably pass to Joe or Kirsty will be able to tell us the makeup of today. But in terms of the kind of suitability, I think, we are speaking about those lower tariff offences made up the group of today.
Yeah. Joe, would you like to say something on that?
Well, I would use a merged word again, probably, and say that it's a bit of a mixed bag. But I don't have the actual mix or knowledge of individual offences or convictions. I don't know if Kirsty does, but I do know that it's a pretty mixed bunch.
Kirsty? Yeah,
I would agree, Joe. It's a mixture of different offences that have been committed by the people on the StreetCones programme this time round, and everybody, I guess, we went through a process of assessing suitability for everybody participating in the programme. So yeah, to minimise risks.
We lost Philippe, and we desperately, Todd was desperately working in the background trying to find a lifeboat, a technical lifeboat for Philippe to join us. But he has written something. He said, from Philippe, sorry for tech issues. I think we have around 11 million people with a criminal record today for various offences. To me, it should be about prevention rather than repression. Help people with problems to avoid being in a constant spiral of criminality and be in the system that is costing so much money. StreetCones type work is a great starting point. I think that's a valid point from Philippe. From Marion on Aberdeenshire, she's an Aberdeenshire participant and was probably, you saw her in the film. I would like to say that I was the one that said, speaking through a character made it easier not to just get feelings out, but also make you reflect on how your actions can help others. Something that possibly wouldn't have happened without that workshop. So that it was, she was the person that spoke about that in the film. And looks like from another participant who was viewing online, this is a question for Joe. What's the difference between physical and mental activity in this context? The difference between assembling furniture or assembling a script? I think we've kind of touched on that.
I can answer it again if you like.
But Joe,
well, I mean,
yes.
I think
yeah,
that's, I understand the question of what it means, because there is, mental work is tiring and exhausting as physical work in its own way. And if you're asking somebody to come out of a comfort zone and take part in something like this, or some other mental or academic activity, then that is going to be a difficult and probably physically as well as emotionally, maybe mentally exhausting activity. But in the context of a community payback order, a physical activity is expected by the courts and people that in our government who oversaw the development of what a community payback order is, and they expect some sort of physical work to take place as part of that order. I personally, and based on a professional opinion, think that the balances within the community payback order could be adjusted and changed to include more opportunities to complete the hours and by taking part in similar things like this. So at the moment we are restricted as to how many hours of the order can be completed on StreetCones, or with Apex as another organisation that we could use, or other organisations within Aberdeenshire that we can have providing courses on employment, for instance, through Job Centre Plus even. But there is only the 30% of the order that we can use to do that, and then the rest has to be physical unpaid work. That's what the statute is. But I would like to see that increased to a much higher level, because I think there's much to be gained from doing that.
Yeah. Philippe has taken to using the back channel chat box to kind of join the conversation, and I think it's fair that we involve him as much as possible. And he replied to Darren's point. I think Darren Bruce is absolutely spot on. The other issue is mental health problems, and StreetCones actually addresses the issue. He says he is so annoyed with the technical problems today. We feel your annoyance, Philippe, and we're with you 100%. Let me see if there's just any last questions here. And we can start thinking about wrapping up. Do you know what? I think we've got most of these questions, and we've answered. Some of them have come through, but we've kind of answered them. They've been answered within the context of other questions. But on that as well, I think that is definitely, as well as the benefit of participants being able to reflect on their offence, some of the other benefits that come out of these kind of workshops is improved self-esteem, their communication skills improve, which has impact on their employability and their community engagement, etc. So there's real knock-on benefits to participating in the workshop. It's not a duck walk by any stretch. That does demand something of people, and there is the people will often report at the end of a 2-hour workshop that they feel spent, exhausted, because it's asked them to bring something from within out to be reflected on. So it's a process that could be as arduous as picking litter and painting fences, I'm sure. So listen, I think I'd just like to give you guys the last, if there's anything that you'd like to say, any last words, Darren? I'll go round you all. Darren?
Well, thanks, Adam. Just thanks to yourself and the team for the great work that we've clearly seen as part of the video. And thanks for the support up in the Northeast, Adam.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Kirsty?
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody at StreetCones for everything, all their involvement in the script that was produced, and the participants that took part were absolutely fantastic. we're all really proud of the motivation and the input that they put to it. So thank you to everybody in Aberdeenshire on StreetCones.
And Joe.
The same as that, but particularly I would like to thank the participants, because I think it took an amazing amount of courage to step forwards and take part in this. Must have been quite daunting, at least initially, if not later on. So yeah, I would give a large round of applause to the people who took part.
Absolutely, yeah. A big hand to the participants. And there's one last comment here that's probably quite relevant from Jim Lawrence on Twitter. He says, one of surely the good aspects of this work is that victims of crime won't bump into the offender in their case, as the workshops are unlike being out in the community. So I know there's probably pros and cons to that as well, but certainly for certain individuals, there may well be a benefit depending on the proximity of the offender to the victim in terms of their community. So there's probably value to that. Is it? Do you want to say anything on that last point? No, Darren, Kirsty, is that a fair point? It was less of a question and more of a statement from Jim Lawrence on Twitter, but I felt it was probably valid to include it.
I think it's a valid point for somebody to make, and if you live in a small community, or in the communities of Aberdeenshire, then there's a strong likelihood you might see the person that committed an offence against you. So it probably can't be avoided altogether. But yeah, I do take the point, and I think that might be reassuring for some people.
That's a fair one. Well, listen, thank you all for helping make this happen, for work for everyone up in Aberdeenshire who supported this work with StreetCones and who referred participants along and encouraged them along to produce the play that they did and tell the story that they told and go through that process, that road to change that they went on, because it's proven valuable all over the country and with all the local authorities. As I said, I watched I'm not able to watch all of them, but I watched Aberdeenshire and I found it very moving. I had a lump in the throat at one point. So thank you all for taking part. For everyone else who's watching, thanks for participating, for firing your questions over to us. Remember that this will exist online now, so you can share it with friends and family. For those who weren't able to watch it today, you can share the link. They won't get the live fabulous questions and answers from myself, Kirsty, Darren and Joe, but they'll be able to watch the live stream. So do please share that. Likewise, if you go onto the StreetCones website, onto the Roadworks page, you can watch our CPO film that we made, Something to Lose, which was the starting point for all of this work. It's a short 16-minute film following somebody on their leaving the steps of the Sheriff Court and going about their CPO journey. So that's it. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next time. There's also other live streams happening this week. There's one on Wednesday night with an ex-offender, Brendan Boner. So please tune into that one. And that's it. Goodbye. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Pure